Good afternoon and welcome into another day of SPL action. Week 2, day 1 here on Friday. It is Finch and Myth to be your guides into this very first match here. And what a great one we're going to be starting off here with Spacestation up against Sanguine. You know, back in week 1, Myth, I kind of felt like we had a couple of lopsided matches, but that's not going to be the case this week. All of them are going to be heavy hitters.
Hey, all but one, and then, I'm going to point it out. On Sunday, when Space Station come up against Obey Alliance, Obey's going to stop them, and that's just what's going to happen.
Right, you voted exactly that way, and hopefully you'll get your just rewards for that towards the end of the season. Sanguine and SSG to start, another big one coming up with the Knights up against EU United later on. Things are clumped up already here at the start of the week, but Ghost, remember your Phase 1 playoffs champions, are still up at the top. It feels like in their rightful spot. Sanguine, Radiant, and SSG all right behind them. Renegades 1-1, and then obviously some struggles for EU United and Obey. But this next set that we're going into, I feel like this is a big one for Sanguine. You heard them talking about it a little bit in the SPL waiting room. Gone are the times where Sanguine are the underdogs. Now when they come into matches, we expect this team to play well.
I expect them to play well and to play the best gods. I mean, that's exactly what their strategy was. And I think one interesting piece that we can glean from that Wrong You brief tidbit that we heard is that he loves playing against the best teams. Playing against SSG, that's one of the best. If Sanguine brings out more when their enemy team is able to bring it out of them, I expect that no matter what set they're playing, they're going to play to the caliber of their enemies, and maybe even beyond it.
And this is always an interesting type of matchup for me because we know that Sanguine are the type of team that like to wait till the late game where they can group up as 5 and just team fight better than you. They've done it enough time to this point where we can all say they're the best team fighting team in the league. But it's a question of are they going to be permitted to get to that point by Space Station? Are they going to be allowed to play that same style? Because they have a tendency to get a bit run over in the early game. Now, obviously, some of the current meta picks I think favor Sanguine, but how do you like their chances here up against SSG in particular?
I think as far as SSG goes, being an early game team, SSG is more along the lines of a jack of all trades. They've got a strong early game, they've got a strong mid game, and they've got a strong late game, but they're not the best at any of those individual parts of the match. I would say if we were worried about Sanguine getting run over, of course we got to give shouts to Ghost, the best early game team in the league. But as far as Space Station goes, I think these guys are always just looking to find that one big break. Space Station is a team who establishes a lead, they'll never let it go. They don't like to throw once they've already got that positioning, but getting into that lead always comes at a different point in the match for them.
Yeah, if we're going to talk about Sanguine's 5v5 as their strength, then I don't know how we could talk about Space Station's 3v3 and not give that credit, because I don't know if there's a better 3v3 out there than Cherio, Raffer, and Dardez right now, because those three guys just always seem to be on the same level to me when I watch them play Miffle. They have such coordination between them, such trust in Raffer in particular. If he's on a pick like the Kepri or something more aggressive he's been playing so far this phase, they know that he's going to be there with the peel, with the damage, whatever it is. When the 3v3 is playing with this level of synergy, it's hard for them to lose to anybody, even a team as good as Sanguine.
I'm glad that you brought up Raffer's kind of diverse God Pool picks. I feel like when he's playing those aggressive picks, he's almost directly speaking to the enemy team saying, well, I don't respect you, so you don't get to play against my best stuff. If you see him locking in the Kepri, you see him locking in the Geb, these more supporty picks, that's Raffer buckling down and saying, all right, guess I might as well win? And it usually does go that way for him. I'll be excited to see which version of Raffer we get today.
Yeah, Raffer's one of those players who, I think he lets some of that outside stuff in sometimes, right? He is such a strong player, one of the best supports we've ever had, if not the best. And I think sometimes Raffer doesn't know if it's worth waking up for you or not. You know, I think it's that kind of style for him. So when this team is all clicking at 100%, I think they really are unstoppable. It's just a question of if they make it to that point. We'll find out, though, here in these picks and bans for game number 1. And remember, we're coming in with those changes. I mentioned this in SOC earlier. I may have gotten a little ahead of myself. But here we are playing with those bonus balance updates. So that means that things like Akate are a little bit weaker. You heard them talk about it on the waiting room in terms of Golden Blade getting some changes as well. Spear the Magus getting some shift. Do you expect to see some different stuff being valued in the picks and bans today, man?
You know what? I would say that as far as auto attack assassins go, they may have gotten the biggest hit with those Golden Blade changes. Ring of Akate still synergizes incredibly well with that auto attack mage build. Typhon's Fang, I mean, Shoes of the Magi. These are so strong items that synergize incredibly well that I'm not sure that the slight nerf that we saw to Ring of Akate will be enough to remove those magical hunters from the meta. So I'm really excited to see which way bans go. Sanguine banning out that Cupid early on might be an indicator that saying, well, we're going to keep looking for the Freya. I mean, we saw Netriot on Twitter just earlier this week saying, yeah, Freya still seems pretty good. And if you guys haven't seen the clip, it was him getting like a triple kill at 10% health.
Yeah, I'm not surprised that Netroid was popping off on Twitter. I'm not surprised you have your $2,000 laptop behemoth chilling behind you there either. But if I saw it in that close-up, we're, though, getting a good glimpse of exactly sort of as you mentioned of what's being valued. So far, no Mage ADCs banned. No surprise to see the Cthulhu, the Aphrodites, the emojis of Persephone banned away. But this is what I was wondering. Ularin being banned over Freya, even into Netroid, who we know would pick Freya no matter what the meta was. That's very surprising to me, and I know SSG are not sleeping on it. They must have a plan for dealing with this Freya.
They must, but even knowing that you're only able to ban out one magical ADC, I would have let Ola run through just because you know SSG would have been able to get it themselves. The strategy now has to shift for SSG. They need to look for aggression in that duo lane. I wouldn't be surprised to see an Uller picked up early on because you want to find someone that can punish this Freya for merely existing. And I think as far as that goes, the only hunter capable of doing it consistently is Ul.
It is one of the things about playing up against Sanguine, I think that is at least somewhat easy, is that you pretty reliably know what they're going to play, right? They're going to play the best god currently available, and they're going to lock it in. So Freya was the one there, and so this next time around, they're going to look down the tier list and go, all right, what's the next best thing available? Lock that in too. And I think SSG have picked so far kind of knowing that about Sanguine with this Amaterasu and this Jingwei. Even though Netroid is going to have a ton of pressure over there in that long lane with it, Jingwei is not particularly susceptible to it, and Amaterasu is a great flex pick with a ton of pressure.
It is. This Jingwei is the best safe hunter pick for the long lane. If you're reliant on your jungler to go over and help you out with the Freya, or if your plan is to win the game around the Freya and kind of ignore, Jingwei is definitely the pick you want to go. Earlier in the SOC, we saw their safe hunter pick was the Hachiman. Hop on that horse, it doesn't really matter. Freya's going to have haste and ring and be able to chase you through it anyway. At least Jingwei can get up into the air and remove herself from the playfield, get over walls, and try and escape that way. As far as safe hunter picks go, Jingwei is almost always going to be the one, so it doesn't really surprised me that SSG's going that way. Sanguine, like you said, gonna run down that tier list. That Horus and the Nemesis, yeah, they're there.
Yeah, they're there, they're taking it. Rongyu loves to pilot the Horus. It lets him be aggressive in the early game, and then the late game gives them tons of options. I mean, I'm still thinking about the highlight play where Rongyu gets them out of there with the to the skies, but as they're fading away, Netroid gets the kill. So, I mean, certainly this team is comfortable playing it, not just in terms of how it fits into their comp, but everyone on the team knows how to play around every ability that every other player has.
I like this Hebo pickup a lot for SSG. We saw it earlier in the SOC. This was the counter matchup that they were looking for the Freya. If you get this Hebois in the jungle, give him Blink, maybe send Amaterasu in a solo. He can look for the Blink in, find the Water Spout, immediately follow it up with Crushing Wave. That's a very reliable way to one-shot at least one person. And if that one person's Freya, always getting immense value. Anyone that is able to take out Freya in a one-for-one trade is doing the most for their team. So if that's SSG's strategy, I like it a lot. With the bans coming out as they are, Thoth and Merlin coming out for SSG, and Heimdall and Achilles coming out for Sanguine, it seems like both teams are kind of trying to mitigate what the other one doesn't have. SSG says, well, they don't have a mid laner yet. Let's get rid of these high damage outputs, get rid of these artillery strike gods who are going to be able to burn out or confirm these objectives. Sanguine says, well, let's remove frontline and peel potential from SSG's draft.
Yeah, and that's Shinto's god pool too. He loves to play Merlin, even though I think some of the other mid laners are kind of moving away from Merlin right now. Shinto's comfortable with it, so we'll certainly pick it. But now we'll get a chance to see Raijin picked up, and I'm a bit surprised we haven't seen more of him. You see him at that 0% pick rate. I think Raijin is certainly still strong now. I know that he was probably pretty reliant on Magus. A lot of these mages were, but should still be plenty strong. It's not that hard to get to the percent pen cap as a mage nowadays, so I would not be surprised if Raijin's still strong.
And back in Phase 1, I would have said that Shinto was possibly the best Raijin in the league. A lot of people like to give that credit to Twig. I think they just like seeing the aggressive jump-ins. As far as consistent play goes, I love Shinto on this pick. And following it up with the Cerberus isn't just a good into their team comp, Sanguine are also removing the possibility of SSG looking for this weird pick Cerberus, which would be a good counter matchup in a Freya. So far, Sanguine's draft is exactly what you would expect from them from all their interviews. We're going to play the best stuff, and we're going to try and play it the best. I mean, Sanguine's got the best stuff right now. They're playing against possibly one of the best teams in the league. If they play it well, I mean, I love Sanguine's draft here, and I think they can absolutely win if they make it to 30 minutes.
What about this AMC, I assume, for the middle lane? I mean, a lot of question marks here. I also would assume Xing Chen for Raffer, right, because he loves to play this pick. Where do you think all these picks are going to be going here, Myth?
That's the hardest question you could ask me, man. I mean, look at this. All right, let me go. Hebo jungle, Jingwei ADC, Amaterasu solo, Xing Shen support, and then we'll have the Amuzin Cobb in mid. But I am willing to say that there might be a flex in that jungle role. We might see Hebo go solo so he can free farm a little bit, and Amaterasu in the jungle for the additional pressure. But I would vastly prefer to see Hebo in the jungle.
Yeah, as you mentioned, Crushing Wave probably the most important cooldown on the map right now because it has the potential to take Freya out before any of the lifesteal or any of the burst potential comes into question. He can take care of her that quickly, so I think that you're right that maybe you want that Hebo in the jungle so you can get a little bit of value out of it a little bit sooner. But either way, it feels like we're getting a grasp on that meta from both teams. I know back in week 1, it kind of felt like maybe some people were a little bit behind on it, but here, Myth, everyone is ready.
They sure are, and they've got the counter picks available to them. My eyes, again, are on Netruid. You have to shut him down in the early. Don't allow this man to free farm.
That's got to be it. Find a way to shut Netruid down as they move into game number 1.
It is certainly easier said than done to find a way to shut Netruid down. Thank you, Finch and Mifflin. It is Dolson and Aggro on the call, and of course Doug working the cameras for us. And hey, you at home, you said Sanguine's going one for one, or 1 for 2 maybe this week. Is this the one you have them losing? You can vote in chat now and let us know. Aggro, I did vote for Sanguine in both of the weeks. Those were my caster picks. I have the sneaky suspicion one of the two teams between SSG and Radiance, might pull a fast one on them. I don't know if it starts here, though. They've got themselves a great draft for game number 1.
They do, but I like what Spacestation has as well. I mean, you look at the early Jingwei pick up against the Freya. That's always been a matchup that players seem to gravitate towards when Freya's meta because you can use agility as you're falling down from Banish and get that long-range dash and all the benefits from it. So I like that pick, especially against the Horus that Rongyu eventually went towards as well. I am a little bit worried for Spacestation and how well they're going to be able to protect Dardes, but this Nemesis matchup is a really volatile one. It feels like it should be really Nemesis favored because she just ults you and what do you do? But AMC has so much damage output that he's one of the few mid laners that I think can actually stand up and fight up against the Nemesis. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that matchup's going to play out.
Well, and obviously, of course, going to be slinging some auto attacks there on the AMC in the mid lane. But actually, we talked about this on the waiting room, Aggro, in that a lot of these mid lane hunters that we see are sort of more ability damage based. And to reiterate my point, doesn't mean he's not going to be auto attacking plenty. But with the way that you see some of these built, looks like, Transcendence maybe early on there for Dardes in the mid lane. It's sort of an interesting take where it's physical spells being cast maybe rather than magical if you want to look at it that way.
And you're going to get plenty of the best of both worlds with AMC. That's what makes him a really strong mid lane pick is that the reason you see mostly ability hunters in mid is because auto attack hunters take longer to scale. Auto attacks need more items than abilities do to be effective as a general rule. And so you look at AMC, especially with the Mage's Blessing pickup that Dardes has gone for, this is a pick that brings good ability pressure because his abilities poke you out, they clear well, but then his auto attacks let him out-trade you when you both use abilities to clear the wave. And if you're both trading abilities, he's probably going to out-trade you then too. AMC just out-trades everybody. He does a lot of damage right now, and after some recent buffs, a little bit of a swarm scaling buff as well, I'm not too surprised to see Dardes especially, who's had a very storied history on this pick and been very successful on it, gravitate back towards it.
And hey, he played AMC in week 1 against the Knights, and it worked out for him. 1-1-3 was his final slash line. That was the game where the Knights were far and away ahead, and then SSG just sort of hang on and move into the late. But let's kind of refocus back in on this one here. Sanguine have themselves this pick here in the Freya. It looks like the Ring of Hecate hasn't quite put off the desire to pick some of these magical ADCs. Again, on the waiting room, we discussed maybe where some of that shift in priority would go to. But it maybe plays right into Sanguine's hands, where if you can kind of withstand this early game, get this Freya to a point where she swings, Sanguine are a fantastic team in these mid to late game team fights. And so keeping Nitrioid safe is going to be pivotal, I think, to late game success here for Sanguine.
But it's nothing they're not used to. I mean, this is a pick that even when Ring of Akate wasn't a super strong item, Netrioid had gone to the Freya before, and this is a comfort pick for him throughout the years. So it doesn't surprise me at all that Netrioid's willing to play it and pick it early in the draft, and I think that playstyle that you're alluding to is one that Sanguine is very, very comfortable with. I think that the main strength of this Sanguine composition is how hard it can be to dive them because of the amount of immunity from the Freya, the mobility from the Horus, the damage output from the Raijin, the mobility from Panatom. There are a lot of tools here for Sanguine in these team fights, but when you look at what Spacestation has, they've got the Hebo up against the Nemesis, a matchup that you really like because Hebo can give himself and any teammate slow immunity on that water carpet, and that's Nemesis's whole kill potential, is her slow immunity. So I love that matchup for Spacestation. I think the Ama is one of those picks that can actually keep up with some of the mobility that Sanguine has and allow Cherio to potentially do the same. I think that Spacestation's backline has a lot of damage when they stand and fight, but not a lot of runaway potential, at least for Dardes. So I think that the mobility of Sanguine is going to have to go up against what Spacestation has, which is a little bit more prowess in terms of standing and fighting, and that's where a lot of this game is going to come down to.
Well, it's going to have to be a mid to late game conversation we have when the team fights really start to break out. As for the first 4.5 minutes, both teams somewhat comfortable with sort of standing and farming and the way things are. I think an interesting talking point as well, actually now, is over here in this solo lane. I think the Cerberus is a pick that we have seen really just for SOT, now that I'm kind of racking my brain about it. He's found some mitigated success, I would argue, here on this pick. What do you think Yarkors may be able to do on the Cerberus?
I like the idea of getting this extra magical damage dealer. Normally you don't want too many magical damage dealers because magic defense items are typically very efficient, and so you don't want to allow the enemy team to buy these cheap Genji's guards and Oni hunters and that kind of stuff and be really tanky to multiple members of your team. But the way that you can mitigate that is with the prot shred of Ghastly Breath. So Yarkor is really there as a setup man to make sure that Shinto and Netrioid are doing maximum damage. More so Netrioid than Shinto, but certainly these two magical, the Cerberus and the Freya, are going to be on the same targets in fights where they're going to be able to stomp. Now, Yarkor's job is obviously not to be in front of Netrioid at all times, but if Raffer has his ultimate down and he's a little bit out of position, that's kill potential instantly just because of all that damage that Yarkor is going to have himself and enable Netrioid to bring.
And I love the way Yarkor started this one off. A little extra power in those boots, and you can already see bullying out Nika just a little bit. And that's really kind of what Cerberus brings on that other half. It's one of those hybrid damage, also a little bit of tankiness in these team fights. Can melt down backliners if he's able to find his way in there freely. I think Nika carries a lot of weight on this Amaterasu pick as well. And in a lot of SSG's largely successful games, admittedly, it sort of is the Nika rotations once the solo laner starts to reach that point. So I think Amaterasu, I think we've touched a little bit on what maybe Nika is looking to do here in this game, especially against Sanguine and the lineup that they have. I think it's going to be pivotal, though. Nika on this Amaterasu is going to have to match a lot of what Yarkor is looking to do as well.
And based on Nika's recent history, I think that's a pretty safe assumption because he's been playing really, really well since the beginning of last year. I think he's been one of, if not the premier solo laner in the entire SPL. So I don't think that's really a concern here for Spacestation. It's really down to Nika and Cherio synergy that I think has brought this team so much success, this team core. Those two have been playing together for years now, dating back to when they were on Sanguine way back when. So it's been a long time coming for these guys, and I think that synergy that they have has been very apparent in the games where Spacestation looks really good. And this is not an easy combination to have synergy with. I mean, Hebo and Amaterasu are two gods that want to do vastly different things in the team fights. Hebo is really not a traditional dive assassin. He's too squishy to do it. Right. So that change-up is going to be key here for SSG.
Now, I think one of our early questions that we had going into this game, somewhat answered here. Certainly, Spear the Magus not off the table. But Shinto going back to maybe a more traditional route in some of the mage builds that we've seen, picking up this Divine Ruin early on here against what SSG have built out. Is that an item pick that maybe makes some sense to you?
It's a little surprising that it's first. I do think Divine is good against Space Station's comp. You look at what Cherio's going for. He's going Lifesteal Boots into either a Bancrofts or a Typhons. You've already got the Devourer's Gauntlets there for vote. So you're getting value out of this Divine Ruin one way or the other. But I do think that something like Magus could have been a little bit stronger here because the healing won't be as big of a deal at this point.
Uh-oh, to the skies from Rongyu and to the backline. Cherio ulted down by Panatom, and it's first blood over to Sanguine 8.5 minutes in. There's a bit of a lull over the battleground. We're wondering where this first bit of aggression is going to come from and where else but a big Horus ultimate.
And that's perfect. You just drop your whole team right on top of Cherio's head. Cherry a little bit greedy with the beads. I don't think he had information on how many had taken that to the skies ultimate. Thought it might just be Panatom and Rongyu, but with Shinto's damage there on top, made for a quick first blood for Sanguine. And now you've got no beads or ultimate on the Hebo, which is not ideal for an already pretty unsafe character. That might be somewhere that Sanguine could look to punish again quickly.
And the second question now answered. Where would Golden Blade stand? Still in the build. The Panatom is the answer. It's Dardes now rotating over. Rapper is here as well, though, and he's going to knock down Panatom. A 1-for-1 trade, but a big ultimate from Yarkor is going to pull a couple back. Cerberus still solo tanking there on the front line. And look at Nika. He wants to dash right back in. That's the up-down from Rapper to lock down Yarkor, and Nika will grab the kill for himself. Rongyu's already used his knock-up here. His dash away, back off of cooldown. He finds his way to Shinto, but Cherio rolls out the red carpet. And down goes Rongyu as well. Big swing for SSG, 3-for-1.
Cherio looking like the end of Hot Ones right there, rolling out the red carpet. But a really smart fight by Space Station Gaming, because they know that Sanguine knows that they've got a window. I mean, it's just really thinking 2 steps ahead of what Sanguine's going to want to do. I think that what Sanguine does there is very intelligent. We know right side buffs are coming up. We know Cherio doesn't have beads or ultimate. We know we've got Stygian Torment there for Yarkor. So if we can get the Cerberus on top of the Hebo, then we're going to have a great team fight. But Space Station understands Sanguine's objective on that side of the map. And Cherry spaces perfectly to keep Yarkor interested and think, oh, maybe I can get him with my ultimate if he just makes another mistake and one more step forward. But Cherry spaces so well, and Nika's doing damage the whole time. Raffer's there with a good rotation, and Dardes gets caught, but does his job as the AMC. AMC's really like physical Zeus in this way. You're going to die if they want you to die. It's your job to just get as much damage off as you possibly can to make the fight advantageous for the living members of your team, and Dardes does exactly that, even though he falls pretty early. So just a really smart fight by Space Station, understanding that they are going to need numbers there, they know what Sanguine's going to want to do, and then they bait Cherio perfectly.
Yeah, Dardes at least gets an assist for his troubles there. Pulls him 1 level ahead of Shinto there in the mid lane. The largest gap that was really pulled there for a moment, it was a 2-level lead for Raffer over Rongyu. Rongyu, of course, dying, going to put him a little bit further behind there. Now SSG rotate over towards those oracles. They're going to lock down some vision on this left-hand side of the map. And SSG haven't shied away from dropping, I won't necessarily call them deep, but sort of around that upper crescent of the red buff wards. So it could be something that they maybe start to turn their eyes towards. They got vision control all on the left side of the jungle.
And it shouldn't be a surprise that it's Space Station who really wants to prioritize vision on that side of the map, because they have the significantly better early game Gold Fury clear. I mean, Netrioid will get there, but Double Hunter is way stronger right now.
And hopefully, they'll be able to scale that a little bit further into the mid to late game. Of course, we always talk about this ticking time bomb that is Netrioid on this Freya. Ring of Hekata, completed there for Netrioid in the long lane. Kind of limping. I mean, I won't call it limping. It's only 1 level behind, but Netrioid has fallen a touch behind a vote here. It is the Gold Fury being looked at by SSG. The Oracles are dropped down, but there is some ward coverage from Sanguine there as well to maybe make SSG think twice. You got to admire, I think, taking a poke at it if Sanguine don't respond quick enough free Gold Fury for you.
Absolutely, and we see that window is not particularly large for Sanguine to react in time, because the damage output is really, really there from Space Station. So I think that just going for that over and over again really taxes Sanguine's mental in the middle of this game. You just having to be constantly ready for that can be pretty difficult.
And I think one thing, actually, now that we've sort of got a moment, we talked about how we like the Cerberus pick, adds a little extra magical damage. I mean, at this point, though, you start to look at what SSG are building. Runic Shield first overall for Nika. Raffer has gone Heart Ward immediately. It makes some sense there into that pick. Is that, while there are some benefits to adding a little extra magical damage, I mean, I suppose that's a double-edged sword. You look at the way SSG are building and potentially some large mitigations for what Sanguine are trying to bring into these team fights.
Absolutely. I think that it's a big reason why we see Cerberus in this slot and not, I don't know, Cthulhu or Jormungandr or something like that. It's not that you needed more magical damage in this composition for Sanguine. You clearly didn't with Raijin and Freya. You wanted more magical penetration. You wanted some prot shred courtesy of that Cerberus. So even though it does incentivize Space Station to build more magical defense, is that trade-off worth it? Are you stripping away all of those extra prots that they might not have built and then some to make the Cerberus pick really worth it? I think that Yarkor's effectiveness in this game will be the answer as we move forward, but that's the question that Sanguine really need to be asking themselves.
Not one that we can answer quite yet. Maybe a fight around the Gold Fury could answer it for us. A knock-up from Cherio, but yet again, just a little bit of poking and prodding from SSG. It's wrong you catching a good bit of damage there. Dardes has finished off that Brawler's Beat Stick out of the mid lane as well. Oh, so you kind of draw some similarities to mages and more ability-based hunters. Divine Ruin for Shinto first. You get a Brawler's Beat Stick for Dardes, filling pretty similar gaps.
Exactly right, and it's really easy for AMC to spread that Brawler's Beat Stick passive. It's one of his best items when you need some anti-heal, and it's fantastic against what Sanguine has just because of Rangu on the Horus and all the lifesteal that Netroid will have on this Freya. Burst damage is going to be the name of the game in order to try and take care of this DPS machine that is this mage over here in the long lane. So I think that the Brawlers is perfect for that. You take out some of her lifesteal and simultaneously give yourself some flat pen. So you kind of hope that the Swarm, Honey, and Stinger combo that AMC players love to do will be enough to snag the kill.
And if you're Netroid, you got to be thrilled with the way this game has started off. Yarkor actually may be sensing an opening over Nika. Just one tower shot onto the Amaterasu and a dash away. So an ultimate used over in the short lane for Yarkor won't result in all that much. But I think Netroid's got to be happy with the way the first 16 minutes of this game has gone. He's gotten himself an assist. Hasn't really been looked at, ganked all that much, and when you really think about it, outside of the big jungle skirmish we saw on the SSG side of the map over by the blue buff, haven't seen much from either jungler yet up to this point.
No, we haven't, and I think that it's an interesting hypothesis by Space Station, because Space Station's a team that I think is a little bit more flexible in their playstyle than most other teams. I think that they have the capability to turn on the jets early and give Cherio something like an Erlong Shen to try and control the early game really effectively, or a Serket in order to try and control the early game effectively, or they also like these late game scaling type of compositions, and they're trying to just outscale Sanguine. I don't know if it's going to work.
Ooh. Return gank from Rangu. Whirlwind of Rage and Steel from Raffer will toss the Horus backwards. And that's a horrific emblem drop down as well. The dash away enough for Rangu here. Yarkor's ultimate back up. And the solo laner rotates over to the long lane. Raffer taken low, but he's able to get out alive. Nika has rotated in. A little bit late, the knock-up over onto Panatom. The double dash, though, will get the Nemesis right out of the fight. Ultimates exchanged back and forth. No kills just yet.
Both supports tanking an awful lot, but Space Station looking a little bit healthier for now. Taiko Drum's going to come through and force the reset.
Shinto is just going to plug a little extra damage. Not fully reset, though, as the Gold Fury. Now it will be, as SSG don't continue the damage. Actually sustains right around half HP. Sanguine still hovering close by. 3 ultimates for SSG, none for Sanguine moving into this fight. Here's the dazzling offensive to maybe open the door. The stun isn't there, but it just plays space by there for Nika and SSG as the Fury is knocked down.
All in the name of the space created, and Nika does enough to force back the rest of Sanguine and set up for a Gold Fury secure by Cherio's crushing wave. That is 2 ultimates used by Spacestation. A little surprised they're willing to try and take another fight right away over this Pyro, but maybe no fight at all with that much damage between the AMA and the AMC and the Hebo. No fight necessary to secure that. And this is what Spacestation really likes to do. I think that when I think of the teams like Sanguine, like Radiance, the teams that really want to take it super late a lot of the time, I think Spacestation is a little bit of a different breed. I think that this team plays the early game particularly slow when they have compositions like this, but I think that their ramp speed is a little bit quicker. They go 0 to 60 in games where they're able to grab a little bit of an advantage. I think a little bit better than teams like Sanguine and Radiance, and so now it's really the ball's in Sanguine's court to try and stop a potential group up here from Spacestation, because all of a sudden they just got out themselves a 3,000 gold lead, and if with this double hunter, I think that it's pretty likely they decide to start grouping up and pushing for towers.
Agreed, and I think to that point, shouldn't be surprising that we see 5 total kills on the board 19 minutes into the game when you consider both the teams that are playing. It's largely what Sanguine have been able to do, but it's SSG, kind of the intangibles, maybe not intangibles, it's a Pyro and a Gold Fury locked down. A little aggressive, though, from Raffer as he moves under the Tier 1 tower, but it's those intangibles that put SSG kind of in the driver's seat so far of this game. Sanguine playing a little bit more reactively, with SSG the ones really turning the wheels and pressing down the pedals. It's the Tier 1 tower in the mid lane being looked at now as Vote has rotated his way over to the mid lane. Not sure how much of an answer Sanguine will look to have to this one. Just a few auto attacks from those double hunters will put this one down quietly. Shinto actually going to commit the Taiko drums. Just apply some damage, but no big commit on the defense there from Sanguine.
Pretty rare misplay from Shinto. Don't often see him make mistakes like that, but a wasted ultimate in the mid lane. I just think that Spacestation is the team that wins games or is up 8K all of a sudden that you go, wait, how did that happen?
What happened?
I say that the most for them. They just all of a sudden tend to blow the game wide open, and I think that they are really good at doing exactly this. Small win into keeping the pressure on. You know, it's like when you have a near miss, you know, a shot rings off the post in hockey, and then you get a full offensive zone chance. You know, that defensive line has to work for 2 minutes straight. It's that constant pressure just putting you on edge when they find the slightest opening that I think Spacestation does really well. And so far, Sanguine has answered the task pretty well. They waste the ultimate in mid, but they still have only lost that Tier 1 tower so far.
Right, all things considered, could be a lot worse if SSG really pushed in for some of those fights. Panatom popped the ultimate as well a few moments later. We've now crested that 20-minute mark, though. Still 5 kills on the board. But the big number, and what we've kind of gone back and forth on, is this gold lead that SSG have started to build for themselves right around that 3K mark. Who do you argue? I mean, we know that this is SSG's MO. They love to do this, but you look at these compositions, you maybe cover up the team names at the top of your screen. Who's happier with the state of the game 21 minutes in?
I think that's hard because I think both teams are happy. I think both teams have a little bit to lean on when it comes to the late game. I think I'd be slightly happier if I were Spacestation, if only because Sanguine's composition is really dependent on how hard Netrioid's going to pop off in these fights, because there's enough magical resistance by Spacestation's itemization that you expect Shinto's damage to be a little bit neutered in comparison to what we're used to. The Nemesis pick is kept in check by the Hebo on the other side. The wild card here is what Netrioid's going to be able to do on the Freya. And so for that reason alone, I think I do favor Spacestation slightly, but that doesn't mean that Sanguine can absolutely pop off in these fights, particularly Netrioid, and swing it very, very quickly. I just think that Spacestation's optimal pathing to a one team fight is a little bit easier to execute than what Sanguine has.
I think it's a great point. I think Netrioid hasn't been slowed down, but hasn't really gotten the chance to spread the wings on the Freya here just yet. We are on the Fire Giant side of the map largely over these last few minutes. Some small poking and prodding from SSG don't result in much. It's now a Fury that's respawning. SSG locked down the first one. Oni Fury this time around could be pivotal and opening up a little bit of this map. But you just sort of look at where some of these waves are pushing. Only one ward, or one team rather, really with big ward coverage around this Fury, and it's SSG. Both teams have the ability to do it quickly, especially if Nika rotates over, has that Shogun's Kusari, a little extra attack speed for Dardes and Vote, both out of the mid lane. So you wonder if we see more of what we have seen from SSG, these proactive plays, starting up these objectives, and Sanguine hopefully won't be too quick on the trigger on some of their ultimates and can get a full 5v5.
And I love the way that Space Station is built. You highlighted that Shogun's there for Nico, which I think is phenomenal. Not only do you love the more magical protection against Sanguine's comp, but with the double auto attackers that you have, getting that passive is fantastic. I like Dardes going into the early Heartseeker, getting that change to its cost now a little bit cheaper means that you can prioritize it earlier.
It's now Oni Fury. Started, half HP. Ultimate from Yar. Core doesn't pull back much. Dardes low health in the backline. Panatom has already used his ultimate there as well. It's the Taiko drums ringing down some damage. Nika stunned down back behind the Oni Fury. Big banish over onto Vote. But surprisingly no follow-up there from Sanguine. Health-wise, a little bit better off is the blue side, but not feeling all that comfortable to fully re-engage.
Not quite yet, but I do think that they can still fight. But man, look at the damage onto the Gold Fury. Again, it gets low, and again, Space Station confirm it with a 4-second, time to start. That was incredible.
Well, Rangi wants to go right back in. It's Cheerio who catches the Raiju. Panatom in there. Panatom will get rid of the SSG jungler. The dash right back out. And Sanguine rather are all safe for the moment. Raffer not wanting to catch any of that tick damage on the back end of it will back himself off. So when it's all said and done, it's an Oni Fury here for SSG, but you lose Cheerio in the meantime. 40 seconds could be big for turning map pressure and maybe a pyro for Sanguine.
Mistake there by Cheerio for sure to ult towards mid instead of ulting back towards his team. And again, Horus's ultimate causes problems for that Hebo. But I think the bigger problem here for Space Station potentially is their relic situation. Look at how many they burned in that last team fight. Dardes is very vulnerable now, as is Cheerio, where you feel like Sanguine's in a much better spot. Only 2 sets of beads down. Everything else is still available pretty much.
Great point. A lot of timers for SSG. 8 of them, in fact. Pyromancer looking like it's going to be fought over. Yarkor takes a hefty amount of damage, but look at this. Panatom is blinked in. Nobody else from Sanguine to be found. Shinto says, yeah, I'll try to toss out some damage, but doesn't result in anything. Nika, dazzling offensive, Netrioid answers with that Freya ultimate, disjointed maybe from Sanguine. Panatom blinks in, goes in, but nobody else from Sanguine is there.
Rare miscue by the team of Sanguine. Completely agree. I mean, Panatom just on a different page. The rest of Sanguine, high tide, the waves are moving in and out. Felt like Sanguine was doing a good job of moving forward as a unit, baiting some abilities, then coming back. The rest of the team was on the backswing when Panatom went in, and that allowed him to get one shot.
And now the script is flipped. It's Sanguine who are down at jungler. This time, though, the Fire Giant being looked at. Quick work for SSG. Not to be surprised with the amount of physical damage that they've got on their side to melt down those objectives. 26 minutes in, aggro, and I think the game has finally been busted wide open despite a 3-for-4 kill lead.
0-60 for the Space Station team. They do it all the time, and look at their golden hand. They haven't even back to spend since the Oni Fury fight a while ago. And that's why that fight was so good for SSG, is that they had Oni waves pushing. Sanguine knew they were on a timer. And even though Space Station hadn't back to spend, they had a ton of golden hand. I mean, Dardes finished off his Titan's Bane and sold his Blessing and got a full 6th item in Odysseus Bow. That's how much he had at the time. Space Station just understand that their map presence is so strong after an Oni Fury that they can afford, even losing Cheerio, to stand and play patiently around that Pyromancer and just waste Sanguine's time around that objective. And they bait it so well. Space Station really, the ebbs and flows, they felt that very effectively and were pulling back and pushing forward at the exact opposite rate of Sanguine. And then when one person goes a little bit out of tempo in Panatom, the Space Station insta-kills him off of a fantastic knock-up from Foe.
Yeah, it's rare, and you pointed it out as it happened. It's very rare that we see Sanguine lose a fight and now potentially a game off of one miscue like that. Normally very consistent and concise on their play calling and their team fighting. Small collapse here from SSG. 2 members of Sanguine, now 3 over here in the long lane, but certainly aware of where Space Station Gaming are. Wrong plenty of escape there. Look at this, though. Panatom has found his way into the back line, and that's Cherio, a little bit worse for wear. Both junglers, though, aggro, have now used their ultimates down for maybe this next team fight.
Feel like that favors Space Station. I mean, obviously crushing wave is a huge deal, but the meme is he's got a lot of ults, right? 3 ults in the kit for Hebo is the meme. So he's got plenty of damage and utility still available, whereas Panatom has really relied on that ultimate as a main damage source.
Look at Nika, just chases down Panatom. Rongyu has gone in, Yarkor is there to follow up, and nobody else from Sanguine able to do so to the Sky's Use, but right back in place. Raffer on the back line, not taken down, but Dardes is by Netrioid here. Nika has finally gotten rid of the solo laner from Sanguine. The gas has been pressed by SSG. Left side Phoenix being looked at here. Rongyu half HP. Netrioid much the same as well. My goodness, Horus can't walk that far forward. That's a nice double banish from Netrioid. Maybe saves this Phoenix, but the disengage quick enough from SSG. Panatom right back in, but will slow himself down. 1-for-1 trade, but the tier 2 tower in the left lane, the final casualty for Sanguine.
And it's all about Dardes getting that damage off once again. It's a great zone work by Nika, buying Dardes as much time as possible. But if I've said it once, I feel like I've said it 1,000 times. As a mid laner, especially one like AMC, if the enemy team wants you dead, they'll get you dead. It's a matter of how much you can force them to use on you and how much damage you can get off. And Dardes does it perfectly right there. Everyone on Sanguine, despite killing the AMC, half HP, if not lower, plus Yarkor is dead, and that's because of the way that Space Station team fought that very, very effectively. Vote, I think, has looked phenomenal in this game. Feel like he's barely taken any damage at all on this Jing Wei while still putting out quite a bit. He's not playing scared in the team fights. He's just positioning really effectively to peel for Dardes and get his damage off at the same time.
I think this is, tough if you're Sanguine. Of course, not out of this game just yet. You always have the time bomb that is Freya. But you look at kind of this low kill game, 5-4. Netrioid, all things considered, has participated in 50% of the kills here for Sanguine. Wonder if you're a little frustrated. You get this massive advantage in mid to late game Freya, and haven't quite been able to find an opening to fit it into the puzzle just yet.
Can we take a look at player damage so far? Because last time we looked at player damage,
that's a good point.
Freya was pretty low on that list. She's jumped considerably for sure, as expected, but is that where you want your first pick to be in damage? It's still not that absolutely insane quite yet. It only takes one fight for Freya to really pop off, but we just haven't seen it yet for Netrioid.
Well, right, the one fight that I think springboarded him up a little bit was the last one where he was able to find some free swinging damage under that left side Phoenix. It's now FG one more time for SSG. It'll be the enhanced variety this time around. You look at the response from Sanguine, inching their way over into the Fire Giant side of the jungle to the skies. Deleted is Cherio. 5v4 now for Sanguine. They want to re-engage. Netrioid up in the air as well. Raffer split from the rest of his team. Shinto will knock down the Xing Qin, and suddenly it's an FG for Sanguine.
I just don't know why Space Station didn't sentry the actual Fire Giant. The Sanguine had perfect vision, and that allowed them to find a really good window to engage.
Yarkor's so low, and Nika thanks him for it. Panatom now alone on the back line as well. Shinto has to use both of the actives. Nika banished up into the air. He goes Thorns. Certainly worth their weight there, but Netrioid's going to get the kill nonetheless. Back and forth here, but it's SSG that lose 3. Sanguine only lose 1, but it looks like Fire Giant will not be for either side.
Hey, one fight for Freya. She popped off. She landed every single auto on the Amaterasu, and all of a sudden she's top player damage on her team. Kind of crazy how that works right there for Sanguine. But again, I just think it's a little bit of a weird call by Space Station. Nika had a sentry ward in hand. They decide not to sentry fire, maybe feeling like they can win a fight, and they're fine with Sanguine stepping up, but Cherry got one-tapped by damage from Panatom and Rongyu, didn't Aegis or ult in time, and from that point on, it got a little awkward for SSG.
Here we go, one more FG fight. Can Vote survive? Of course he can. He's a Jing Wei. No Aegis needed. Panatom, though, he might have traded his life. Dardes finishes off the kill there. Rongyu alone back in the FG pit, and that's a double kill for the AMC. Sanguine started up the Fire Giant, but they're not able to finish it. It's SSG that take it. 5 strong, 33 minutes into the game.
Panatom just doing a little too much in this game so far, and that's been a problem of his in his career. Sometimes he tries to do a little bit too much on these assassins, and in that play, you got to play that a little bit more slowly. Getting Vote out of the fight is an acceptable outcome for your ultimate right there. Dashing in is not, and once he dashed in, it really sealed his fate.
Yeah, this is looking rough here for Sanguine. SSG, 5 members strong, 20 seconds on the 2 respawn timers for Panatom and Rongyu. Can you delay? That's the answer here for Sanguine. SSG are not going to give them that chance. Dardes turns around, avoids a lot of the damage there. Titan now being pulled out. All 5 members of SSG looking towards it. Cheerio gets rid of the Freya. Down goes Yarkor as well. See you later, Shinto. It's the Deicide. 33.5 minutes in, and SSG will take game number 1.
An impressive performance from SSG for sure, and I think Sanguine just look a little bit uncharacteristic right there with some of their plays. I think that they didn't really live up to what we've seen from them for the majority of the SPL this year, and that's just one of those, sometimes that just happens, and I think that this is going to be a good mental test for Sanguine. Still a pretty young team in terms of the SPL experience. Can you just shake it off and go, hey, bad game, Panatom, my bad, you know, I was going in a little bit too hard. Let's just reset mentally and get back into it. Because even with those mistakes, Sanguine was still a player in this game.
Yeah, it seemed like which jungler could delete the other one and then turn around and get out alive was kind of the answer to it a few times here. And SSG answered it correctly more times than not. Low kills on the metrics there, but SSG, they get themselves the win nonetheless. Now 1-0 up over Sanguine. We'll go back to the desk to see how it happened.
Thanks, Dolson and Aggro. If there's one thing that we know about Space Station, it's that when they get ahead, they don't often give that lead up. That's exactly what we saw here. Even with Sanguine having a good start to this game with getting first blood, it was Space Station that seemed to have all the pressure throughout the mid to late game here, Myth. What did you notice as the big difference maker here? Was it the comp? I mean, we talked a lot about how this Xing Chen seemed to itemize specifically to stop Netrioid. What kind of stood out for you here is giving SSG the edge?
I would say SSG got a very small lead early on in the game, and characteristic of them, they didn't let it go, but they also like to grow it. And that's an issue that we see in the lower leagues of play, especially today. Even when some of these teams get small leads, they're not able to transition it into something larger. SSG immediately, the second they were looking 800 gold up, they group up around Gold Tree, take a good fight there. They group up around Pyromancer. They're constantly looking to push the lead even further beyond. And that's why even around that 25, 26 minute mark where Sanguine started to look like they might be able to take some of these engagements, even when they did win small out, SSG's lead was already grown to such a point that it didn't really matter. And I think you're right to highlight that Xing Shen pick. Even how he itemized Nemean Linen. He had the Witchblade to get rid of attack speed. Xing Shen's got a really good matchup in a Freya because Ferocious Roar is going to make you auto-attack for less damage. If that was the strategy and they came in with it, it worked out perfectly to mitigate a lot of the strengths of Freya.
And that last clip we saw was a pretty critical one because I think Sanguine really was back to the point where they could fight Space Station on even ground around that Fire Giant, but Yarkor has to go back to left lane to defend where the Phoenix had fallen. There's a certain point where you fall behind by so much that you don't get any more even fights. There's too much map pressure in the other team's favor. I think that's what SSG got to cash in on at the end of this game. They had so much control of the map that Sanguine couldn't get their feet back underneath them for an even fight. And we've known that this has been Sanguine's weakness for a long time. If you get to the late game, there's no team that does it better than Sanguine, but if you can run over them in the early to mid sometimes and make it hard for them to have good late game team fights, even though they're that good at it.
And Space Station showed us a different form of running over the early game. They didn't play it like Ghost. They weren't constantly looking for engagements and trying to forcibly shut down the entirety of Sanguine. SSG instead said, well, maybe we don't win out on every single engagement in this early phase of the game, but we can win out on map pressure. We can win out on objectives. Let's build a lead our way. We're not really putting Sanguine down. We're building ourselves up. And that might be one avenue into beating out one of the top teams.
And there was a really particular fight that I thought was important, Myth. It was Sanguine got first blood. I think they got one more kill after that. But then they took a fight up near the Chaos side blue buff, and they ended up getting 3 for 0'd in the early game. And that really set them far behind, because especially, remember, Sanguine don't get off to early leads that often. But as soon as they lost control, as Space Station sort of regained that early game momentum, they never gave it back up. And I wonder if that fight, where they got 3 for 0'd over near solo lane, was kind of a big decider in this match, because SSG never slowed down after that.
I think it was. That's something that we see from Sanguine pretty often, where they'll maybe get a small lead in the early, and then they look to try to transition their playstyle away from their signature, wait till 30 minutes, play the anime opening and just run it down. Instead, sometimes when Sanguine gets an early lead, they try and evoke that ghost energy and try and run it down across the map entirely. And I think that's just not playing to their strengths, and that's likely why they moved up to that blue buff like that. They wanted to see, well, we got a lead, let's see if we can expand it out. And instead, I think Sanguine would benefit a lot if they adapt to SSG's playstyle. Let's not try and put down the enemy team and build ourselves up. I think that fits them way better.
We're now into the picks and bans for game number 2 here, Mifflin. Same bans so far. Persephone and Aphrodite taken off the table. And remember, Space Station happily banned Oloran and gave up Freya in game 1 and still got the win, even considering how strong Netroid is on that pick. I'd not be surprised if they want to go for something similar here again. Force Sanguine to beat you even with that Freya pick, because it really opens up your drafting phase if you don't have to worry about Freya.
I agree. I think that SSG really did have a strong strategy for it, but if Sanguine did recognize that the main issue was that Jing Shen really mitigating a majority of the damage, if Sanguine decided to take it a little bit earlier on in the draft, take that first pick Freya again, they might even be able to take the Jing Shen for themselves. We know that Rong Yu can play it very well, as can Yarkor, and taking that away from Raffer would be huge.
Wow, so far, the same. The Cupid even getting banned, the Cthulhu, the Afro, and there's the Oloran ban again from Space Station, leaving Freya up, daring Sanguine to take it first overall again. I think this is the kind of thing you can only get when the best play the best. Space Station clearly came in with a game plan, knowing exactly what Sanguine would do and were ready, and now here they are again, Sanguine taking this Freya first overall. They've got to make an adjustment. Myth, do you think taking away the Xing Chen's enough? Because really, Netroid was still impactful on the Freya, it's just that kind of the rest of the map fell behind.
I think that taking away Jing Shen will give him a slight boon, but yeah, Sanguine lost all the way across the map. If they're able to play it a little bit more safely, play their own pace, I think that would have been fine. They could even let Jing Shen go through again. I think where Sanguine lost was really in the strategy and how they used their lead in the early game. So even if Jing Shen does come through for SSG, I don't think it's really curtains for Sanguine. But now Sanguine getting this Freya again, they know that's not a mistake. SSG certainly feel like they have a strategy that's going to work for it. And I'm glad to see that Sanguine don't back down from their guns. They want to keep doing what they've been practicing. They're going to keep their strategy rolling, and I think that's very impressive.
I would not be surprised if you see this Horus come through again here, Mifflin. It makes a ton of sense. Rong Yu got them first blood with it, brought the Nemesis over and the Raijin to be able to find that first blood. No reason not to run that back. They're going to even run it back with Panatom. And you heard Dave and Agro talking a bit about how they thought Panatom maybe got a little bit out ahead of himself or kind of lost a little bit of control in that game. Maybe just run it back, pull in those reins a little bit here on this Nemesis.
I agree. Panatom seemed like he was trying to play a different god. He seemed like he wanted to be that Bakasura. He wanted to be a Thor, someone who can get involved in the early game. But on this Nemesis, you really don't have to. You can wait till the late game, which is really indicative of Sanguine's entire strategy, or what was their strategy in Phase 1 and the beginning of Phase 2. I really do think they kind of got swept up in SSG's pace a little bit, and if they go back to playing their own game, their draft absolutely can work.
So far, though, SSG happily running it back. Amaterasu, Jingwei, and Havua, the exact same first 3 picks they did in Game 1. The only adjustment for Sanguine this time is the Terra over the Horus. They're still going with Freya and Nemesis in the same positions. Do you think that this makes some sense to put Rong Yu on the Terra instead of the Horus? Was the Horus part of the problem? Maybe the Terra's teamfight presence is just that much better.
I really think that this Terra selection was for the counter-engage potential. The Horus is a lot more proactive of a pick. Terra, on the other hand, if we see Amaterasu dashing in or Hebo trying to get involved with the Blink, immediately Terra's going to pop her ultimate, try and throw down a root at her feet and help out her team. And I think if that's Sanguine's strategy, and it tells me right now with this one selection that they really are trying to get back to their roots, wait till the 30 minutes before they start to get proactive. I like this pick a lot because it fits their playstyle so much more.
There's the Xing Chen bando you're asking for, Myth, from Sanguine, and they're going to ban away the Achilles. Sanguine, or SSG on the other hand, though, they're not changing anything. They're banning the Merlin and the Thoth the same way they did in Game 1. They're saying, prove you can beat this draft. That's what the challenge that they're putting to Sanguine here at this point. Do you think banning the Xing Chen is enough to do it?
I think it's a very good start. Jing Shen has a way safer matchup in a Freya than Ganesh would have. If Freya gets her pulse off before Ganesh can find the silence or the knockup, immediately the damage is going to be returned in spades on this Ganesh. He doesn't really have a safe way to stick in these engagements. But it's still, if he goes for the Witchblade strat, he goes for the Nemean, he goes for all these items that we're going to shut down the Freya anyway, now he's got a little bit harder lockdown. That dash is going to keep you locked down a little bit longer. You've got a really good gap close if you decide to use your Dharmic Pillars from a range. There are ways that Ganesh is going to be able to do similar things to this Freya, but the execution is going to be a lot thinner. He's going to have to play it a lot more well, execute on it perfectly, whereas Jing Shen with that double jump, CC immunity on the ultimate kind of afforded him that a little bit of safety.
Sanguine now making some big adjustments here, Meph. The Terra different than the Horus, the Cucullin in place of the Cerberus, and the Chiron now in place of the Raijin. They're going to go with the Hunter mid, I'm thinking, for the strategy and get Freya back over to Netrioid. So this is a very different look for them around some of the same pieces. Meanwhile, SSG, as much as they could, are just running it back. The AMC mid, the Habwa jungle, now it's Ganesh instead of the Xing Chen we saw last game, but still basically the same comp.
SSG's comp showed that it could work. It can very likely work again, and now their objective burn potential on the side of SSG way higher. I mean, Dharmic Pillars is going to make it even easier for them to blow up the map if they do get that small lead again. Sanguine, on the other hand, with this Cucullin and Chiron, that's a little bit concerning to me. Chiron's got decent CC immunity, he's able to cleanse out, so Amma might have a hard time using that dazzling offensive, but this Cucullin is going to open himself up to so much aggression. He's largely immobile, he's only got the Salmon Leap, he's got slight CC immunity on the ultimate. Dealing with a Jingwei and a Hebo, those are gods that are going to be able to blow you up instantly. If Cucullin gets knocked up, that might just be curtains.
He'll definitely have pressure in lane, but what is he going to do in the team fight phase? That's the question for Sanguine, as they already have their backs against the wall.
Well, Sanguine liked maybe a few of the important gods that they had in their composition in Game 1 aggro. You look at the run back for Panatom on this Nemesis, Netrioid right back on that Freya, but then it's kind of a rebuild elsewhere. It may be more interesting than anything else. It's the Chiron for Shinto in the mid lane, and not used to seeing this guy not play these big playmaking mages.
This is a playmaking hunter, though. Look, as Finch was saying during the SOC earlier today, excuse some bias because he just loves Mercury. Excuse some bias because I just love Chiron. I think this god is super, super flexible in what you want to do. Build path, you can go a billion different ways. Hunter's Blessing instead of Mages is something that Shinto's decided for here, which I think you can go either one. We could see fail not style crit build. You can go full pen. You can go purely ability based. You can do a million different things with this pick, and I think all of them are pretty solid. I think Chiron is just one of those picks that I've been expected to see for a while. I'm excited to see Shinto pull it out here. I think it's great against the Amaterasu in the sense that CC is very telegraphed, and you'll be able to get your team out of it pretty easily. Same with Ganesh. You can stop those Dharmic Pillar lockdowns pretty easily with a well-placed training exercise. So that's the main thing with Chiron is how well you're going to cleanse your teammates. But it's also how accurate are you with your ultimate shots, because things like AMC that normally are able to get out a little bit, return some damage, you toss a Chiron ult on top of the dive from Panatom, it's going to be very difficult for Dardes to stay alive. I like the idea of the Chiron here for Shinto.
He's got to show it. I'm very excited to see what Shinto is able to do. It's something we'll have to keep our finger on as the game moves on. See what direction he goes with builds and things of that nature. Now, SSG, we sort of mentioned how Sanguine, similar core maybe, but changed up 3 of the picks with the Cucullin, the Chiron, and now the Terra. SSG, complete run back here after game number 1, and why wouldn't you? I mean, it really played in to what SSG do best, and you pointed it out. It's the kind of slow burn and then suddenly stomp on the gas and get things out of control. But all things considered equal, we saw halfway into that game there was a gold lead for SSG, but it wasn't over. It really came down to just whoever played better or worse, we argued both compositions, maybe comfortable with where the game was at. Do you think Sanguine, despite some changes, have a similar composition where if they last to the 30 or so minute mark, it just comes down to who performs better?
I think so. Anytime you've got a Freya on your side, you're feeling pretty good about going late, but I do think that Sanguine's team composition has changed a little bit. They lost team fight presence out of their mid. Chiron's not bad at team fighting, but it's certainly not as strong as something like Raijin. But then you get a whole bunch of team fight injection courtesy of this Terra that's so phenomenal in those 5-on-5 group ups. So you also get a little bit more sustain from her. I think a lot of those fights in game number 1 were a little bit drawn out, a little bit more focused on Dardez's poke in the mid lane. Something like the Terra might be able to withstand that a little bit better and bring a little bit more consistent sustain to the team with the use of the Monolith instead of the Protector Surge that Horus had. So it's an interesting switch up from Sanguine. I think that how Rongu performs on this Terra is going to be key for them.
And I wonder how things change with Yarkor as well in this Kulkullen. I mean, think back to Cerberus in game 1. Found some decent ultimates, but the follow-up wasn't quite there from Sanguine. It's not that they weren't necessarily trying to open up these team fights. It just wasn't as sort of jointed as we're used to seeing, disjointed maybe across the board. Does Kulkullen fill some of that gap to you? I don't know necessarily that Cerberus formed a gap, but do you think Kulkullen could be the answer to a few of the woes that Sanguine had in game 1?
I do, and for multiple reasons. Number one, as we talked about, will Cerberus bring enough prot shred to offset the extra magic defense that Spacestation is going to build? I think that now you don't have to worry about that tension at all because you've just got your typical one-mage setup as Panatom in some trouble, uses beads on his own Terra's wall, and now it could be a Raffer that's in trouble.
I love some Nesh, and Raffer might not be so happy to be playing the elephant here. Shinto knocks him down for first blood all the way from the back line, and that's a fight that Raffer was looking for. Raffer set that one up, thought maybe there was more damage coming from Dardez in the mid lane, but the counter-engage from Sanguine just too strong.
And Cherio completely out of mana as that engagement started, so it was the right call, I think, to give that up, but did not expect the extra rotation in damage from Shinto's ult coming through at the exact same time. Going back to the solo lane switch up, I think that now you're not incentivizing Spacestation to build a whole lot of magical protection, and we talked a lot about the Cerberus wanting to be close to the Freya so that he can actually prot tread the target that Freya's hitting. That requires him to be pretty separate from where Panatom is. Now on the Kulkullen, you can be right next to your jungler as they dive into the back line, a little bit more standard of a setup for them. So I think that maybe that could be the answer here for Sanguine.
Right, it was never a damage issue from Panatom in game 1. It was the I do all of my damage, and then if I just come up short on that kill, I'm kind of out on an island on my own. He's feeling pretty comfortable here, looking towards the backside of the SSG jungle. There is a ward just nearby him there, so Spacestation Gaming definitely know where he is. But still feeling comfortable on this Nemesis, and you know, maybe some misplays here and there, but all things considered, I think the Nemesis did a good bit there in game 1.
Without a doubt, it does a lot of damage. Panatom was finding good ult targets. It was just often he was alone in doing so and got punished for it pretty quickly. Interesting to note, by the way, that Panatom started Katana and then got full boots instead of Golden Blade. Wonder if because of that first blood, he got enough gold to just finish it.
Could be wrong. Well, he has enough gold now. Both of the kills on the board for Sanguine. Both for Panatom. Full boots there. Warrior Tabide's going to add a little extra damage on the top, and SSG learned that the hard way. It's been Darda. It's kind of focused around this mid lane. You can see what Sanguine are looking to do. One, of course, a little bit more reactionary as Raffer rotated all the way around above the Sanguine red buff. But this is just a good old-fashioned walk at AMC. He's immobile, and we got enough damage to completely finish him off.
And the Terra versus AMC matchup is one that pretty volatile, like the Nemesis. If you can use Stinger effectively to cripple, then it feels really good for AMC. Otherwise, it's trouble.
Ooh. Big Dharmic pillars there from Raffer as Cherio's rotated through and gotten rid of Panatom. So an answer back from Spacestation Gaming. And Aggro, I think that's a pivotal moment. You got to slow down Panatom here. after the start that he's had to that game. So just what the doctor ordered for SSG. How far do they want to go now under the tier 1 tower? You quite low, but look at the return damage there from Shinto. Could have been maybe a crushing wave from Cherio to finish off some of that damage. But you kind of rewind the clock here, and it's really the first point in slowing down Panatom that SSG are able to do.
And look at this. I mean, it's a lead now for Cherio in the jungle instead of for Panatom, who was a part of both of the early kills for Sanguine. And that's huge to get your Hebo off to a pretty good start in a matchup that you really want to let him find Nemesis as often as possible in the jungle because of the slow immunity that he has on the 2 for both himself and his team. So it's a good start for him for sure. It also keeps pressure off of Dardez because we've seen how easy it is for Sanguine to all in that mid B and kill him pretty easily. If you can consistently be in the enemy jungle because you have a lead on the Hebo, if you can be the ones ganking and forcing Panatom to respond to you, it'll take pressure naturally off of your mid lane hunter.
I think what's interesting to look at as well is it's very similar to how Game 1 started, where Sanguine, kind of get things moving, they find first blood, and then it's an overextension on sort of this right-hand side of the map that SSG are prepared for to turn around at least one kill. And all things considered, we're now even despite 500-600 gold differential. And one more time, similar to Game 1 aggro, it's Raffer that's pulled a couple levels ahead of Rongyu, his counterpart. Big difference maker, maybe making your way to those first relics. But I think the Ganesh has found some good value early on for SSG.
When 0, 1, and 1 got picked off for that first blood, and not a great position for Raffer. But I like the Ganesh pick against what Sanguine has. I mean, Panatom, his shield will get canceled by the Ohm Silence. The double dash, it's very difficult to get those off in front of a Ganesh. Terra has everything she does is 2-stage between setting up the walls and clapping them and dashing through her monolith. I mean, all of that takes multiple steps, so that silence can be quite disruptive here for Raffer. It's really finding his windows where Shinto isn't present that are going to be critical for him because, as we highlighted earlier, Shinto is going to be able to throw a wrench in a lot of those lock down the support plans that Ganesh players often have.
And Raffer's playing the best Ganesh skin there is, bar none. So I think big win there for
really?
SSG as well. What's better than
DJ
DJO? What?
I don't know, dude. I don't know what it's called. The one where he's a giant elephant mech piloted by a mouse.
Oh, yeah, that's right. You're right.
How can you not love that one? That is my Ganesh skin.
Hey, fair enough. Panatom, though, his gank of choice is over here into the solo lane. Ultimate from Yarkor sends Nika running the opposite way. Panatom, though slowed down, not completely out of it, finds a solo lane gank and now a kill over onto SSG.
Really well played by Yarkor there as well to stay out of range of that dazzling offensive. Nika gets a little bit greedy. If he would have just gone all the way underneath the tower, I think he lives. But solo laners just cannot help themselves when it comes to getting value out of their ultimates. They have always got to return at least some damage, and right there Nika ends up paying for it.
That's our first big long lane engagement. Not really only in this game, but in this set. All quiet in game number 1. SSG want this Jingwei to scale just the same as Sanguine. Want Netrioid to scale on the Freya. But aggro, that was a lopsided engagement. Vote had to disengage with the airstrike, and Netrioid took half of his HP down. So you leave these two in a lane where maybe Netrioid can find an opening. Now we kind of have a barometer for where the two hunters stand.
As soon as Netrioid finished Takate, this lane swung in his favor. It's pretty binary for him. Even without the additional healing per stack and the extra cost to it, it's a one-stop shop for winning your laning boxing. So no surprise at all that Vote has to give him respect.
No surprise to any of us. We figured that would be the case. Look at this. Ultimate drop down for Panatom. Crushing wave out from Cherio. Actually, nearly went over for a kill onto Panatom. So good damage returned from the SSG jungler. But the storyline maybe continues to be the same here, and that's Panatom searching for these backliners, kind of throwing caution to the wind, but saving an extra dash here to get out alive. Like the opening, nearly took it, nearly got a kill. Well played to Sanguine.
And he trades one ult for two because you got Dardez and Cherio to both use there. So a good play by Panatom, and you don't want to see your jungler, after being overly aggressive in game 1, lose all sense of aggression in game 2. You don't want them to play super passively after the fact. So this has been a really good middle ground for Panatom. Sure, he got punished the one time, but he's been very successful 3 other times, and that's really what I think Sanguine should be focused on, and they've earned themselves a slight lead because of how well Panatom has played.
It was very slight, about 1,500 here for Sanguine, 12 minutes into the game. Very similar pace to what we saw from game 1. Again, no surprise that both of these teams playing calculated, but it's Sanguine that are able to find exactly what they look for. It's these small engagements, one pick. Now let's levy these small early game leads into something in the mid to late that are consistent team fighting can kind of push to its full limit. So I think Sanguine right where they want to be, but SSG maybe again right where they want to be here as well. One thing I was thinking of, I don't know why it just came back to my mind, and it is sort of removing us from game 2 here. Why the Cupid bans so heavily here from Sanguine? Is there something you think that they figure Dardes? I guess they just figure Dardes is going to be so good on Cupid, maybe outside of AMC, that it warrants the ban, and maybe that speaks larger volumes to maybe where that mid lane meta stands.
Could be, yeah. It's an interesting pick. I mean, or an interesting decision to ban. I think maybe that Sanguine's prioritizing Nemesis so heavily that's a bad matchup for her because of the cripple. So maybe they are kind of insulating themselves for when they know they're going to prioritize the Nemesis. First pick often gets some throwaway bans. Dardes has been spamming a ton of Cupid in ranked, a lot of streams that I've been watching. So I think that might just be in their mind as a potential pick that could give them some trouble here if they're going to prioritize the Nem, and especially if you're going Nem and Terra, that is a really good pick, Cupid composition. Maybe you could be saving it for the second ban phase, but like I said, you're in the first pick position. You've got extra wiggle room there to target out some bans.
Yeah, I don't know why that suddenly came to mind. I'm looking at Dardes, and he's now played the AMC a couple of times, and I just remember Sanguine have not wanted to play against Cupid either time up to this point, so I think fair enough moving in through there. It was the Gold Fury fight in game 1 that sort of started to shift things around. Remember, and it wasn't really even that much of a fight at all. It was Sanguine committing to try to find a pick or two, unable to do so, and SSG not necessarily recommitting anything on the back foot, and able to push Sanguine off of those objectives. One more time, SSG have some ward coverage just above that red buff. And they have that same composition aggro that might be looking for one of these Gold Furies here in the next minute or two, so it's something Sanguine need to be mindful of. Have the control ward on the Fury at the moment, so certainly won't be caught by surprise if it's something that SSG start to look towards.
Might be hard to believe, but Space Station's actually even better at doing those objectives with this composition as opposed to what they had last game, because now you've got those Dharmic Pillars, which are fantastic for zoning and burning down Gold Furies pretty much simultaneously. So that is got to be a worry here for Sanguine. It's not as scary without Nico rotating in, and Yarkor's done a good job of keeping Nika honest in lane and forcing him to stay on that right-hand side, because once you get that power aura into the equation, the Ama passive on the objective, these things go down quickly, and Sanguine learned that the hard way in game 1.
And this really might start to, really come to fruition later on in this game when Nika has the upgraded TP. Thorns for both of the solo laners aggro, but it's Blink picked up for Yarkor, and then of course Teleport filling that relic slot for Nika. How much do you think that changes here as far as, solo lane presence in some of these fights early on?
I like the idea of the build here from Yarkor. I've been thinking about solo lane builds. Warriors are kind of in an odd position right now where you don't really have a good second item that you feel like you can go consistently after losing the tier 2 versions of Berserker's and Gladiator Shield. Nika's actually gone for the tier 3 Berserker Shield, which I think can work pretty well on the Amaterasu. Yarkor's going the more defensive route in the Stone of Gaia, which is just pure health and sustain. And that works because he's Kakulin, and he just wins trades because of his base damage on the transform. So you don't have to worry about getting actual power in that second slot. I've been thinking about if these warriors are going the early soul leaders. Mystical Male got a buff last year and really saw a lot more play all of a sudden and then kind of disappeared from the meta again. I'm kind of wondering where the Mystical Mail is. I would have loved to see it on Yarkor here. I think if the enemy Soul Laner is going to be greedy and go something like Soul Eater first item, you go Boots into Mystical into Stone of Gaia, you just get really tanky really quickly.
Yeah.
Those are pretty cheap items, and you just inherently win your trades because your items are doing damage for you with the Mystical Mail. I think that that's a space that maybe still needs to be explored.
I could be misremembering, but I feel like we've seen a couple supports even pick up Mystical Mail here in Phase 2 of the SPL so far. At least in Week 1, maybe saw it once or twice. What we're seeing now is how the Dharmic Pillars can help you in objective secure. A return ultimate from Shinto. But, you know, I end up with egg on my face. I say there's no way Sanguine are going to get caught out by SSG starting one of these objectives, and they finish it off. My God, look at the experience charts there. Something out of the stock market here in game number 2. But now there's a fight underneath the tier 2 tower. Panatom moves forward, gets the kill over onto the mid laner for SSG. No surprise there. Very hard to disengage on AMC. So it's the tier 1 tower in the mid lane that ends up falling, but Space Station have locked down the Gold Fury.
But if Sanguine can secure this Pyromancer, I think they're going to be feeling pretty good about that sequence. They do have to be worried about Vote's ultimate still.
Big silences there from Raffer. Terra ultimate drops down. Nika unable to escape here. Netrioid has gotten involved earlier in this game, picking up his first kill 18 minutes in. And now it's the disengage from Space Station Gaming as Pyromancer will get knocked down by Sanguine. So when it's all said and done, I guess, Aggro, it's the Gold Fury locked in for SSG, but the plays made elsewhere on the map by Sanguine.
And Sanguine, without a doubt, come ahead because of it. And really, the Terra presence is showing here for Sanguine, and the difference that that pick has made when it comes to these team fights. Last game, Nico was able to really be this effective frontliner on this Amaterasu, and that time, he just got popped because of that Earth and Fury. Such a huge difference when it comes to the enemy's ability to kill your backliners, and your backliners become so much more lethal to those frontliners that are in front of them. Now, Nika hadn't gotten a chance to buy in a while. He was able to buy a full Shogun's Kasari after that death, so clearly had some golden hand, so not as strong as he could have been at that moment, but I could have sworn he was going to be stronger than he was. It was really just the difference of this Freya damage plus that from the Terra.
Yep. And the large chunk of the 2,900 damage for Netrioid was in that small engagement that we just saw. Not to be surprised, though. Remember an earlier point I made, maybe 10 minutes ago, after Vote took about half of his HP thanks to Netrioid, is that these hunters have been just fine without these ganks, without the team present, both wanting to scale comfortably in to the mid to late game. So not surprising seeing them down on the damage charts, at least up to this point. It's when those fights start to break out where you're really going to want to see them shine. Here's a banish onto Vote. Going to catch a little bit of damage. A fun 1v1 to watch here. Vote's losing it, though. It's an Aegis. The knock up, the airstrike. No good. Netrioid puts him down. But what the heck? There's a 1v1 between the junglers that Cherio comes out on top of. Netrioid wins the Hunter game, but it's Cherio for SSG that wins out in the jungle.
And that's how that matchup goes for Nemesis, man. Unless you pre-beads that knock-up, you're going to get killed by it basically every time. And Netrioid, as soon as he gets that Hasten Ring online, becomes unboxable in the 1v1. It's just impossible. I mean, that is as far as one little hunter can go off of Banish, is the long-range agility. Vote did it, and he still gets absolutely slammed by Netrioid hitting the gas pedal. And Vote does the right thing. He recognizes pretty quickly that he's going down or Netrioid's going down. It's mano a mano right there. So he turns and tries to fight. But as soon as that persistent gust missed, it was over for Vote. No way he ever gets airstrike off.
That would have been nice for a stack or two on the Rage for Vote, but not to be. Still not all that far behind. Likely a Wind Demon to round out the build there for the Jingwei. A moment now kind of to check back in on the mid lane, though, and what we've seen from Shinto, 102, 50% kill participation, has gone more ability-based aggro, and one of the conversations we had is the ability to kind of be flexible with your build on this Chiron in the mid lane, but it is ability-based through and through for Shinto.
And this is the way that I think Chiron is best played personally. I think that you just use that ultimate so effectively in team fights that you really want to get the most mileage out of it. And you will do enough with your auto attacks to feel like you're contributing with them. They won't be traditional hunter level of impact, but they'll do some damage. But your abilities with this build will absolutely slam.
Look at this rotation. Sanguine bring 4 members over there. They're going to get there first, but SSG are respond in kind, just a little bit further behind Sanguine. On the attempted rotation, looked like Nika maybe a little bit worried there, but tanky enough, has the sledge online, as well as another Shogun's here for himself in the Berserker Shield, as we talked about earlier. So no real threat there for Nika, but I think the big thing to take away there is both teams very quick on the counter engagements for both their solo laners.
And they know that those solo laners are going to live forever with the builds and the points they're at in those builds.
That's
so
mystical,
it's
man.
certainly worth their time to go through. No, that's a Midgardian mail we got there.
Oh,
Dave.
Midgardian
No, it is a
mail.
mail.
That's what I'm
In
thinking
some ways,
of
it is
on this-
mystical. I got to give you credit for it. I mean, no way that a mail from Midgard isn't mystical in one way or another. But these are a little bit more effective against the auto attackers on both sides, which I like quite a bit. This late into the build, especially, you'll be able to maybe slow down this Freya for Netrioid and not let that hasten ring completely take over.
I blame the designers. 2 males with M's at the beginning. I mean, there's no chance I ever get that right. So, no way that's my fault. They're both silver,
Okay.
too. I mean, you know, I think
Interesting.
the blame firmly elsewhere on this one.
Oh, an interesting
See if it-
strategy, you know? Okay, I see it.
Fair enough. We'll see whose fault this team fight is, though. As Rapper's going to silence out a few, catch a couple in the Dharmic Pillars as well, but it's the disengage from Sanguine, a little bit quicker, a little bit more consistent here as Rangyu won't be caught out or ticked out for all that much damage. Rapper actually goes back to base here, so maybe an opening for Sanguine to start up this Oni Fury arc. We wondered if the blink would make a difference. Here it is, backline on Devote. Sanguine takes down the Oni Fury. Dazzling offensive from Nika used to try to peel away that objective. Unable to do so, and it's Sanguine now re-engaging on the backline of SSG. Water Carpet will sort of usher the rest of SSG out of the front of this fight. Netrioid and Rangyu both being shelled out by the team. It was really Sanguine aggro that were looking for that fight, but they're the ones left worse for wear.
That's just the mobility that Sanguine or Spacestation has between the Water Carpet and the Ama aura from the one. It's a lot of movement speed and pretty difficult to get away. Spacestation, recognizing the small window they have, are going to pull Pyro. Fire would be ambitious for them.
It would be, but they want it anyway. That's another Dharmic Pillars ticking down a good bit of damage. SSG
Wow.
locked down the FG. It's Yarkor alone on the front line, able to leap his way out. But WoW is right, I think, aggro. A small advantage turned around as SSG get the full 5-member Fire Giant.
How long did that take them? 4 seconds? 5,
I blinked.
maybe? In order to kill that Fire Giant there for SSG, and they do it right in Rangyu's face. And I love the idea. I mean, it looks risky. It felt risky, but with the way that Spacestation played it, dropping those Dharmic Pillars, making sure that Rangyu doesn't have any sort of steal potential, Yarkor maybe could have gone in and thrown his hat into the ring with a little stab on towards Fire, but he was more worried about taking out the damage dealers, maybe forcing them to try and reset. But Spacestation right there, just kind of stand tall and don't get spooked from a couple frontliners walking in from Sanguine.
Now how far can you push this? This is the SSG MO. Let's get a small advantage and really ramp it up. It's 6-2 in the kills department aggro, but it's been this slow bleed now that fully swings with this Fire Giant that have SSG in the lead. And maybe the important metrics, 3K in the experience department after a tumultuous early, and now a couple thousand gold in the lead as well. It's just going to get worse as the tier 2 tower in the mid lane is going to fall. It's Vote protecting his tier 1 tower over in the long lane, so they'll protect that gold investment here up to this point. But the question on how far is becoming a little bit more apparent. And maybe SSG are going to get caught out here. That's a knock-up from Cherio. The stun down onto the jungler. Rangyu's going to move in, drop down his ultimate as well. And Sanguine there to play Separator. Or Rangyu hadn't used the ultimate just yet. Play Separator from Sanguine. SSG, though, not fully caught out. Look out for Panatom, though, all the way around the back aggro. Maybe looking for a backline dive.
And he's going to be looking for Cherry, knowing Cherry doesn't have that ultimate or a relic, though his beads are coming up sooner rather than later.
Uh-oh, Rapper half HP, Dharmic Pillars, and the ultimate for Panatom. No chance Ganesh lives there. Double stun from Nika on the dazzling offensive. 1-for-none trade so far. I hate to say only, but it's only your support that SSG are missing. He got plenty of damage to maybe turn around this fight. Shinto, though, is going to try to force SSG back to the graveyard. It's Panatom who dashes in, finally gets rid of Cherio, but Vote takes one with them. SSG have now pulled the kill back. It's Panatom down.
Really, really nicely done there by Panatom. I mean, goes in 1v4, nearly gets out, forces Vote to play it perfectly, and unluckily for him, and luckily for SSG, Vote does play it perfectly. But again, Spacestation just really good at assessing the situation on the fly. They aren't reacting to the way that the game feels like it's going. They're being really, really smart about these opportunities that they're getting. I think a lot of teams, after getting 2-for-1 on that siege, back up and give up the tier 1. Spacestation, on the other hand, stay there, know that they've got the damage in the front line in order to get them in and out, and they get at least something for their money's worth. Now, looks like that might be all they get off that Fire Giant is one tier 1 tower and duo, which is obviously very far from where they want to be, but I really like the way that Spacestation has identified small windows of opportunity and then capitalized without hesitation.
To see if SSG, with the last maybe 15 or so seconds on this power play, can push any more. Likely not. We seem to be barreling towards another Fire Giant play, though, in about a minute's time. If SSG, or Sanguine for that matter, can pull an advantage just before that Fire Giant pops up, that could be a big swing here in this game. So when it's all said and done, Aggro, it's the tier 2 tower in the mid lane that goes down, but still 2 tier 2 towers standing for Sanguine. I mean, that's a massive swing here in this game, but it was, 2K at the start of that Fire Giant play, only about another 1,000 added on there. I think all things considered, Sanguine got to be thrilled with the way that Fire Giant defense went down.
Impressive from them, no doubt about it. They hold strong and don't even give up more than a couple hundred gold off some towers. It was well played.
Here's the Primal Fury for Space Station Gaming. They'll take it down. Shinto, for a moment, the timing was right that maybe the Chiron would take it away, but not to be here. I admire the thought from Shinto, but it won't be. So SSG now get themselves a Primal Fury, another small balloon in the gold lead for themselves, really just buying some time and a little bit of insurance before the Fire Giant starts itself back up here. Sanguine won't be able to steal away one objective for the other. Might be a small Pyromancer skirmish ahead of it all. When you look up and down at these teams, Aggro, everyone's reached level 20, most people nearing that full build state. Who do you like in a 5v5 around the Fire Giant?
So far, I think Sanguine has out-team-fought Space Station in the 5-on-5s. It's just that Space Station's done enough to get the objectives on the back end. So that is the key, is can Space Station keep both Dardes and Vote alive? And if that's the case, then losing Cherio or Rafa or Nika doesn't matter quite as much, as long as one of those two frontliners is still around to help them out, especially after getting that Primal Fury.
Oh, here comes Rongyu. He's going to drop down the pillar. Sanguine trying to take over this Pyromancer. They actually don't care about the Pyro. They just want to plug some damage down onto SSG. The enhanced Fire Giant just now springs out. So this next big fight is going to be massive in the way of changing out this game state. Some good healing from Rongyu. Another pillar on the back. SSG, though, take down the Pyro with little or no pushback from Sanguine for the moment.
And that's because of this poke from Dardes once again. He's full build now, has that Titan's Bane and Heartseeker. Just makes those little honey trails that you feel like shouldn't do a whole lot to you, poke you way more than you want them to. And makes a big difference. And really, Rongyu's been on heavy sustain duty because he's needed to be so far.
Here's the re-engagement now. Yarkor moves in. Cherio sniped down, taken down by Yarkor. How much more can the solo laner get? Gets the stun down onto Raffer. It's a double kill for the Kulkullen at the perfect time. Sanguine turn around and now maybe look at the EFG.
Man, what a snipe from Shinto, and that's character familiarity or maybe some lack thereof. I just don't think that Cherry had any idea he would take that much from the initial snipe. Died with relics and ult still up.
SSG move in, won't steal that one away. A double banish actually on the backside. This is a
Hello?
3v5 that SSG want to re-engage on, and they're going to win it. Vote take down one. Dardes gets another as well. An airstrike up to the sky from Vote. He swoops back down. Panatom finishes off the kill. Dardes trying to get away. The banish is there. Will get the kill onto Dardes. 4 for 3. At least that's what it looks like. Oh, it's the delayed 4 for 3. SSG take a couple with them. Only 2 Fire Giant buffs left alive.
But those trades at the very end of Fire Giant engagements that, you know, the teams chase each other down and both lose 2 more members, those are always worth it for the team that doesn't have Fire. Because you just stripped Fire away from Sanguine and you'll both be respawning at the exact same time. So it really, credit goes to Nika. My man hit a 5-man dazzling offensive. And that does not happen ever, it feels like. And it was a good shell to make sure that it didn't one-shot the whole team by Wrongyu, but still feel like that was a huge ult from Nika. I think that fight could have gone even better, but Vote got a little bit ahead of himself and ulted in, thinking that Spacestation had a chance to wipe their opposition.
Yeah, Nika makes the meal, sets the table, takes the lid off the tray, and it's Dardes and Vote who are able to eat the food at the end of the day. But can't forget about this Amaterasu. That's the pressure we thought Nika could bring on this god when you look at the conversations we were having in Game 1. We know that this guy can absolutely bring it on this pick, and that's a fantastic example of it. So now the question is, what does Sanguine elect to do here? They still got EFG on a couple members very good at taking down these objectives. But Aggro, it's got to be a disappointment. You get Enhanced Fire Giant. Yes, you lose 3 members. But if you don't even get a tower at the end of the day, still 2 Tier 1 towers on the map. That won't be the case, as the Tier 1 tower likely will go down here. But it's what can you do in the next 2 minutes that really will shift, I think, how Sanguine feel at the end of the day.
It's a bit of an awkward position for them because I think they really ideally would like to get this Oni Fury in order to start pushing up Phoenixes, but by the time Oni spawns and then the waves start spawning, the enhanced waves, and you look at the wave positioning in mid and right, those waves aren't particularly pushed for Sanguine, so how much would Oni Fury really do at this point? I think that it would waste the majority of your fire. I think that you should be trying to at least get this Tier 2, but Sanguine should know better than most that even Tier 2s or Tier 1s aren't free when the enemy team is set up because they just denied Spacestation on the siege on a Tier 1 a minute ago. So this Oni Fury is going to help, but by the time it starts getting there, fire is going to be gone for Sanguine, and it's not a great position for them.
Yeah, it's 2 minutes on the respawn, 1 minute on the buff for both Shinto and Netrioid. The total tally so far, an Oni Fury and a Tier 1 tower for Sanguine. Tier 2 tower being looked at. Panatom rotating through. Cherio off near the blue buff in the solo lane. So now you've knocked down both of the towers in the long lane. What else can you get, though, is the big question here for Sanguine. A momentary 4v5. If Sanguine can actually find the engagement, and Aggro, it looks like maybe that's what they're looking for. Panatom and Yarkor sent around the backside. Nika enough to push away that pressure. Tier 2 tower, 10% and now 0% HP. So when it's all said and done, 3 towers and an Oni Fury is what this Fire Giant looks to bring in.
Not bad, but, I mean, it's an EFG, it's enhanced. That means there should be a lot.
That's a big blink engagement from Yarkor as well. He's found his way into the back line. A shell will buy some time for SSG. Dharmic Pillars for Raffer will fully disengage the rest of this fight. I'm fine with Ganesh's throwing out that ultimate. I don't want to say willy-nilly. I mean, it's a good kind of disengage tool for yourself, but the cooldown relatively low there for Raffer and SSG, and have that back up in plenty of time. But it's these solo laners, Aggro, that are looking to start these things off here, and they've both done wonders for their team on separate occasions.
And I've loved the way that Sanguine has played the composition. I mean, you look at how these fights have started. It's blink in simultaneously within a second of one another for Yarkor and Panatom. Look at Dardes. Shinto immediately up into that ultimate, and there's no way that Shinto can ever be in danger from the dive from Cherry or Nika because of where he's positioning himself with these Chiron ults. And you see the strength of that ultimate when it's so long range and going to deal so much damage, especially on the back of something like a Divine Judgment stripping those prots. Now, Dardes was able to get away that time because he had both relics up, but what about when they do it again in 50 seconds and he doesn't have his relics? That's going to be the tension point.
Well, here we go. It's Pyromancer locked down. It's one more enhanced Fire Giant that is now sprung forth. Neither team, in large part thanks to Nika, has been able to take a Fire Giant sort of evenly in this game just yet. SSG maybe had the better looking one early on, able to knock down a lot of Sanguine's base, but not all of it, and Sanguine much the same. They lost 3 members with the enhanced Fire Giant buff. That is what we're thanking Nika for here. Really ward coverage, somewhat even here up to this point. No real surprises with where anyone's positioning themselves. It's a lot of, if Yarkor and Panatom can do this, swoop around the backline, maybe pick out Cherio. The roaming death squad is there. They won't find the engagement they're looking for.
And this is a much harder siege for Sanguine because they don't have that same insta-burst potential that Space Station has. No Shogun's Kasari on Sanguine's side of the map. They do have that enhanced Frenzy, which will make up a lot of that. But they don't have the double hunters that can really tear through this Fire Giant. Chiron much worse at that than AMC.
Wow, picks happening on either side of this fight. Nika taken down. It was a triple stun from the Mantle, but nobody there from SSG to follow up on it. Panatom found an opening onto Cherio, TKO onto the SSG jungler. Sanguine starting up the Fire Giant. 50% HP on that one. Rapper in range. No Dharmic Pillars from him. Dardes being looked at by Yarkor here. Frenzy popped. Sanguine whittle away and take down the enhanced Fire Giant. Yarkor uses his Thorns. And SSG are going to fully disengage. 1 pick is all it takes, and Sanguine 5 strong this time around.
And I've loved the adjustment here from Sanguine because Space Station's composition looks so good when they're all grouped up. All around Nika, using that aura, you know, getting that Shogun's buff. Sanguine's separating Space Station right now, and they're struggling because of it.
That's a good silence from Rapper as well. The strongest points of the Ganesh kit. Looked like for a second there, I say ooh, because it looks like maybe there's the engagement. Look at all that damage Dardes is being able to put out as well. Dharmic Pillars dropped in. Shinto, Netrioid, both silenced on the back line. They've taken way too much damage here. It's a 5v4, but is it really now that SSG fully reinforced? Nika respawned back from base. Big knockups there from Vote. Nika's found the kill over onto Panatom. Big time fight for Space Station Gaming as Vote has gotten rid of Yarkor. Down goes Netrioid as well. It's a triple kill for Nika back from the dead, and he's put Sanguine into the grave. It's the deicide 38 minutes into the game, and aggro, that might just finish it off.
What a team fight from Space Station, and Raffer deserves a ton of credit, but Sanguine deserves some criticism. Shinto and Netrioid cannot be on top of one another on a Phoenix Siege like that because it makes Raffer's job really easy. He puts Dharmic Pillars right onto both backliners, and because of the build that he has with the Divine Ruin, he half-health both of them. And then Dardez's damage comes through the team fight and nearly one-shots Shinto from that position. Takes him out of the fight completely, and that leaves Sanguine's front line super exposed in the midst of that team fight. One small positioning mistake insta-loses Sanguine the game.
I mean, what, the fan vote was 51-49 for Sanguine? We knew this was going to be a close game, and it sure was. Sanguine, I think aggro got to feel like one slipped through their fingers here up to this point. Couple misplays in game 1, and then maybe a misplayed team fight down the stretch there at the end. I'm curious. We're going to get a chance to talk to one of the SSG guys. They didn't care, aggro. 2 out of 2 games that Freya was let through, and they had good answers for.
I really feel like they just came pretty prepared. I mean, obviously, Vote struggled against it in lane a little bit, got soloed, but that's kind of the nature of the beast with the Freya. I think that when it came to the team fights, they looked pretty prepared to try and handle it. I loved the Yama pick for Nika. I think he created a ton of space. And ultimately, I mean, he got a 5-man ult that game and then a triple kill to end it. So clearly not too bad for the solo laner.
Yeah, Phase 2, Week 2 is officially kicked off here. SSG 2-0 over Sanguine. A great way to start out their weekend here. It's a great way to start it out for aggro and I as well. That's it for set number 1. We'll go back to Finch and Mifflin to break this one down.
Pure willpower from Nika deciding to win the game, bending the game to his will. And if you all want to bend the elements, you certainly can in our new Avatar Battle Pass. You unlock as Avatar, or not Avatar, but you unlock Zuko for Susanoo right away when you purchase the pass. And then as you level up through it, you can get Avatar Scotty, as well as Avatar Aang for Merlin. Tons of cool stuff to unlock with it. We all loved Avatar growing up. No reason why you wouldn't want to hop on this Battle Pass and make sure you get those cool skins. Now, Myth, you and I could talk about this insane game that we just saw, because the whole time we're watching this, like, this has to be a Sanguine dub, right? They're in such a great position. There's no way they don't win this, but Nika, time and time again, chose to win the game.
I mean, Aggro highlighted 5-man ult, triple kill at the end. Nika really was the only difference maker in a lot of those engagements to keep SSG afloat. And it seems like SSG's strategy, having now watched them play against Freya twice, is win the game around them. Let's just ignore Netroid until the literal game-winning fight, and then we'll kill him once, hopefully, and then win the match. It happened in Game 1, it happened in Game 2. Freya died twice in this set. I mean, Netroid just didn't get a chance to really flex his muscles because the game was just burning around him the entire time.
It was, man. I don't really think they found an answer to Freya. I don't think that's the right interpretation here. I think instead, they just tried to ignore it the best they could, and it really worked out for them here in this game. And I give a lot of credit to Nika. Nika did have an excellent game, but you're going to notice something in all these clips. Every time Nika's popping off, it's because there's a good dormant pillars happening somewhere in the fight around him, except for this nasty 5-man ult he gets all on his own, literally saving the game, by the way. Instead of Sanguine having 5 Fire Giant buffs, they barely got out of there with 2. Purely because of Nika, but I think he and Rapper were the big difference makers here in this game.
I mean, I agree completely, but it seemed like today, especially, Sanguine wasn't on the same page. Particularly Shinto didn't seem like he understood that his role in these fights, especially in Game 2, was to be that objective burner. They needed him for these towers, but it almost seemed like he wasn't really willing to hang around it. It seemed like he wasn't really adjusting to that Hunter play style, and instead it left Netroid there to be the one dealing damage to towers. And when Freya's the one hitting the towers, you're trading out your cooldowns, and without your cooldowns, you're not killing anybody. It just seemed like there was a lot of miscommunication. Panatom would engage a lot of times and be left high and dry and just trade out his life for just about nothing. It just seemed like Sanguine didn't come with their best today.
Yeah, they seemed a little bit out of sync, when normally what I would say is their greatest strength is that they're always in sync. But you're right, there were times where Panatom was in, he's right, it's a good fight, but where was the rest of the squad? There's time where Yarkor goes in, not a great fight, and where's the rest of the squad, right? It just didn't seem like they were synced. You already mentioned that it seems like Shinto wasn't quite ready for some of the Hunter responsibilities he'd have to take in mid. I think that we all know Sanguine are an excellent team, one of our top teams, but I don't think they were playing that way today. You can see it reflected in the standings. SSG now up at the top right next to Go. Sanguine dropping down to 1-1, and their trials for the week are not over. I believe they play Radiance later on in this week, so things are only going to get harder for them. Look at that. I don't have to guess. They're playing them on Sunday. So yeah, not going to get any easier for the Sanguine boys.
Man, that's a tough doubleheader, but if they were to call another win back there, I'm sure that'll get their spirits right back where they need to be. My eyes are whether or not Sanguine decide they need to change up their drafts. Maybe they lost a little bit of faith in the Freya. I don't think they should have. I mean, Netroid wasn't the reason they lost any of those games, but they also didn't get very much value off of it. I think Sanguine, especially in Game 2, seemed to shift their focus a little bit. They got an early game lead. They weren't able to grow it much, but it's because they were always fighting on that solo side of the map. Why not play around that most impactful player being your Freya? Why not play around the duo side of the map, leverage that strong team fight ability the second you get Ring of Akate, and then potentially move into Gold Fury? I mean, what we saw was SSG was behind for the entirety of the game, and then the second they got a lead, they pushed it incredibly hard. They took a bunch of towers, they took Fire Giant objectives, and when Sanguine got a lead, they got maybe 1 or 2 more kills. They didn't really do much with their leads.
Yeah, and we might be being a bit too hard on Sanguine. I think that's a 90% win rate most of the time, but Nika and Raffer found, you know, a 1 in 10 team fight there to stop them on the Phoenix and turn that fight around. But that's it for Sanguine. Vote, the one who had to deal with all that Freya, is standing by with Dolson for the interview.
That's right, thanks, Vince. Vote's here with me, and Vote, I'm going to pick it up right there. You had to deal with Freya in lane, back-to-back games here today. She had a 100% win rate coming into this set. Is that something you guys as a team discussed and just had a game plan around this Freya? You felt comfortable letting her through, and obviously whatever it was worked out.
Honestly, I didn't even know that was a thing. She had a 100% win rate. I don't know, I just think she's annoying in lane, sure, but you can, I don't know, there's ways to play around it, in my opinion.
Is any of it, because you obviously had Jingwei a couple of times here in this set, does that weigh into it all? There wasn't really all that much jungle focus or even gank focus in the long lane here in this set. Did you guys kind of feel like, all right, well, all things left equal, all things left alone, the Jingwei is going to scale just fine as well as this Freya?
I mean, it's like, kind of like a known matchup, the Jingwei. It's relatively safe into Freya. I did get solo,
Right.
but Freya solo kills don't really count in my opinion. And if you count Freya solo kills, then I don't know, it's kind of disgusting.
Right, well, outside of even the long lane here, I think we have to talk about Nika and the way he turned around Game 2 there for you guys. And it's kind of against all odds. Sanguine take down that Fire Giant. There's 3 of you guys left alive, 5 of them with Fire Giant. What are the communications like where you decide to turn around and then it's a 5-man Ama ultimate there to win you guys the fight? What's communication like in that moment?
I think Cherry was calling to get out, but I think me and Nika were saying, really, just fight this. And when I saw Nika, when I saw him dash in, I knew what was going to happen. At the second they all got into that corridor.
Hey, fair enough, and it worked out well for you guys here. Big congrats to you, Vote. 2-0 start on the phase for SSG. We'll see you guys in action on Sunday against Obey, hoping to keep those winning ways going. Thanks for taking the time. Everyone at home, that's only 1 out of 2 games we have for you here today. Stick around. We got another good one coming up right after this.